Eagle Eye Detective Agency, Jennifer here.
Jennifer, I've got something terribly exciting for you to see here at the Historical Society. Mr. Peel found a letter written by Violet Verse.
Violet Verse? Didn't she live in Richview over 100 years ago? And the post office is just now delivering her letter?
Don't be silly, Jennifer. The letter wasn't mailed. It was found hidden in an old desk. It's very mysterious, just like Violet Verse, and it talks about a treasure. Come see.
All right, Mrs. Arnold, we'll be right over. Mrs. Arnold has been the curator of the Richview Historical Society for years. Mr. Arnold helps her identify some of the historical objects and documents.
Kids, you must read this. Mr. Peel was about to sell an old desk to Brass Monkey Antiques. He says he found this letter when he was clearing the desk out. It appears to be from Violet Verse, the infamous robber. With the letter came a map. Mr. Arnold can tell you more about it.
Well, I've been studying Violet's map all morning, comparing it with some of the maps we have here. It's a map of old Richview, all right, around the mid-1800s, I'd guess. Some of these old buildings still exist, and I recognize some of the landmarks marked by an X here. Well, for example, Wraith Rock is in Riverside Park. Instead of marking a location of the treasure, this map gives 3 possible sites and some puzzling labels. Gold, silver, lead. What the blazes do they mean? We can't search all the locations. The Historical Society is too short of funds. We're hoping you kids can find the real treasure site, or tell us if this is some kind of trick.
The newspapers called her Violet Verse because she had a violet scarf over her face and because she would quote poetry as she robbed people. They say she was especially fond of Shakespeare. In the 1850s, she robbed travelers all over this area. She never hurt anyone. Then, in 1855, she seemed to vanish and never was heard from again. What a mysterious lady!
Yes, it's a good story. In fact, Mrs. Garcia has been writing a book about her. She's the one that gathered all this information together. She's in here quite often reading through it.
I'll bet Mrs. Garcia can tell us a thing or two about Violet Verse and the things in her cryptic letter. Mrs. Garcia, have you heard? Mrs. Arnold has a letter supposedly written by Violet Verse.
Oh, yes, I heard, and I'm dying to see it. As soon as I get off work, I'll rush over there. Did you know that I am writing a book on her? This discovery could really help move my book along.
Who was Violet Verse, Mrs. Garcia?
Nobody knows. Violet Verse is what the newspapers named a mysterious woman who held up travelers all over this area. She wore a violet scarf over her face and would quote Shakespeare as she stole people's money. Quite a character.
It says Violet Verse was a colorful bandit who robbed several wealthy travelers in the area around Richview in the 1850s. She eluded the law for many years and was last seen in 1855. A reward for her capture was never claimed. O brave new world that hath such people in't, double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. To be or not to be, that is the question. Those are all quotes from Shakespeare's plays. Look, an index to all the characters in Shakespeare's plays. It says that a woman named Portia is a character in a Shakespeare play called The Merchant of Venice. Violet Verse was a big fan of Shakespeare. Maybe there's a clue in the play. Let's read further. The language of Shakespeare's day is pretty hard to understand. In the play, Portia poses a puzzle to the men who come to woo her. One of 3 boxes holds her picture, and they have to pick the right one. And get this, 1 box is gold, 1 box is silver, and 1 is made of lead. Let's read further. The hero chooses the box made of lead, and he's right. All that glisters is not gold. I guess that means that sometimes what looks boring can actually be pretty cool once you get into it. The Biographical Dictionary has information on a lot of important people, both living and dead. Maybe we can find out something about this Portia and what her treasure was. Was it gold or maybe silver?
Jennifer, something just hit me. Mr. Arnold read me the note with the map, and I've been trying to figure out why it was so familiar. Violet Verse wrote, "Between life and happiness." I've heard those words together before, in the Constitution of the United States. The quote from the Constitution is, "Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I hope that helps.
I see Mr. Peel's old desk is here. He must have sold it to Ms. Polaria.
After Mr. Peel told me what he found in this desk, I did a little research on it. It is indeed quite old. The desk was owned by the Prospero family, who imported it from Philadelphia in 1830 or so. They were quite a wealthy family. In 1855, the Prosperos sold it to the Harrisons, who were probably the only family in town wealthier than they were. When the last of the Harrison children died, the desk was bequeathed to the post office, where Mr. Peel bought it. A lovely old piece, really, quite valuable now. Mr. Peel showed me where he found the letter. It was down the back, behind the drawers. I think it fell back there and was never opened. You may examine the desk yourself, if you wish. Mr. Peel told me what Violet Verse's letter said. I think the treasure is silver. It's such a lovely metal, not gaudy like gold, sophisticated, lustrous, and very valuable.
Wraith Rock is on the edge of the park, back there in the trees. This rock has been here since the founding of Richview. My dad says that the name comes from its spooky shape. Wraith means ghost. Mr. Cone is the owner of Sweet Treats. He knows a lot about the Civil War era. And there's Mr. Peel. He's the one that found Violet Verse's letter.
Mr. Cohen has always been interested in history. In fact, I think he bought this site as a location for his ice cream parlor because it used to be a famous tavern.
That's right. I started Sweet Treats on the site of the old Liberty Tavern. I liked the idea of owning a store on a famous landmark.
In the 1800s, the Liberty Tavern was a favorite drinking and socializing spot. But when alcohol was banned during Prohibition in 1920, the tavern went out of business.
I've got the old tavern sign back here above the counter for luck. It's an antique.
Speaking of antiques, where's the desk you found the letter in, Mr. Peel? We'd like to examine it.
I sold it to Ms. Polaria. It's at Brass Monkey Antiques.
Mr. Peel told me about the letter he found. I think the Historical Society should go for the gold. I mean, if you want a treasure, why not get the best? Gold is worth hundreds of dollars for every ounce. In Violet Verse's days, people still used gold for money. I bet a lot of the coins she stole were gold coins. They would be worth a lot of money today. That's my advice. Go.
Mr. Duffy's had bad luck with his crops the last few years. If Portia's treasure is buried here, maybe he'll be able to use some of the money to help fix up his farm.
I did a little research on the area before I bought this farm 10 years ago. There was a mining company here 150 years ago or so, called the Harrison Extraction Company. They dug shafts deep into the earth looking for silver and other valuable minerals. Mining was a really big industry in this part of the country in those days. They found quite a bit of silver here, enough to make this mine famous. When the silver ran out, they sealed up the holes so people wouldn't get hurt in them. I don't think that door's been open in 150 years. Heaven knows what you would find in there.
We've got the clues we need. Pick the 3 clues you think will best show the Historical Society the truth about Violet versus treasure. Those are the clues we needed. Now make your choice. If you think the treasure is out of sight, pick it. If you think Mrs. Garcia is responsible for Violet's letter, pick her. You're right. Portia's treasure is at Liberty Tavern. Let's check the evidence. Violet versus letter had a little poem promising Portia's treasure if the reader could guess the right site. One side is labeled gold, another silver, and a third lead. We learned the newspapers called the highwaywoman Violet Verse because she was fond of the color purple and of poetry. She seemed to be especially fond of Shakespeare. So we looked up Shakespeare's plays, and sure enough, there is a wealthy woman named Portia in the play The Merchant of Venice. This was a big discovery. In the play, Portia tests the men that want to marry her by presenting them with a choice of boxes, gold, silver, or lead. The man who chooses correctly finds a picture of his bride-to-be inside the box. In the play, a proud man chooses gold. He is wrong. Then a calculating man chooses silver. He is wrong. The hero takes a chance. He chooses dull, unglamorous lead, and he's right. Violet Verse presented her version of the same test to us. We chose lead, and we were right. Mrs. Garcia solved the rest of the mystery. Violet's poem said, "Between life and happiness." Mrs. Garcia remembered the famous words, "life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," from the Constitution. In that famous phrase, liberty is between life and happiness. When we looked behind the lead backing of the word liberty on the old sign, we found Violet Verse's treasure, a picture of herself. We not only solved the mystery of the map, but the mystery of Violet Verse herself.